Welcome to the Same Day Podcast, where we discuss driving incremental business growth and other topics related to real estate, property management, and entrepreneurship. Now to the show at hand.
Matt Zalk here. I'm the host of the Same Day Podcast, where I connect with top business experts and real estate leaders. Some of our past guests that I love to mention: Sean Prince, owner and founder of Elect Technology; Scott Reeves of Chickasaw Community Bank; and Lee Easton had a great podcast on his business, AeroVision, and some of the things that it takes to be an entrepreneur. Today's episode is brought to you by Keyrenter Property Management. At Keyrenter Property Management, we're a full-service property management company helping our clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets. We help our clients build wealth while taking the headache out of real estate. Listen, Mike, you're a prime example of a great client that we've helped. You and I have purchased and renovated and then rented nearly a dozen properties together. We buy them for cheap, we fix them up, and we refinance out of the asset so we can do it again. In fact, so much of our ability to service our clients on the contracting side has come from what you and I have done together in our partnership from the early days of Keyrenter. So I want to give you a huge shout out on that for sure. But that's why no matter what rental you have, whether it's a single family home, a condo, a townhome, an apartment, we've got the management solutions that you need. Go to KeyrenterPMC.com or info@KeyrenterPMC.com if you want to send us an email. Before introducing today's guest, I want to give a huge shout out to the original Christy Hemrick for introducing Mike and I back in 2014. She actually was the initial person that put us in touch, and I'm forever grateful to Christy for making that connection. So is Tulsa, Oklahoma, I should say. Mike Basch is our guest today. He's a serial entrepreneur and a political enthusiast with a bachelor's degree and an MBA from USC, all by the ripe old age of 24. Mike was managing 22 coffee bean and tea leaf stores at the same time, which is both a testament to his managerial skills, which he was honing at that time, and also a testament to his capacity as a leader and just as a human being that doesn't sleep as much as he maybe should. Mike has had two successful business exits, Bamco and Spot Ad. One was a manufacturing business and one was an ad. I don't even remember, Mike. You're going to have to tell us. Atento, an ad tech business. Atento is a Tulsa-based, I should say, where Mike is now, founder of that business, is a Tulsa-based investment firm focused on returns, quality job creation, and being helpful, which is where the name Atento comes from. Atento is the premier VC firm in Tulsa, focusing on early stage investing, fund investing, and even recently expanded into Northwest Arkansas. It's also worth noting that Mike is the preeminent expert on the conspiracy theory that promotes me, Matt Zalk, as the potentially a current or former CIA member, and he spends his free time investigating my whereabouts during the 2008 to 2014 period. That often comes with direct investigation, interrogation of me at social events, which can be fun or awkward depending on the situation. Welcome to the Same Day Podcast, Mike Basch. I'm so happy that you're here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
Absolutely. I'm great. So let me talk your early days. You're at USC, born and raised in LA. How did you end up working at Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf and managing 22 stores? What was the trajectory from like your first day of employment to managing all these stores?
Yeah. So at age 16, I started working at Coffee Bean as a barista. And I saw a bunch of inefficiencies. And so I took over the scheduling and the ordering and hired a bunch of my friends and became the assistant manager when I was 17. When I was 18, the manager quit. And I started running this store in Beverly Hills. And from there, we opened a store a couple blocks away and then opened a bunch of stores. And by the time I was 23, I was overseeing 22 stores, a 19 million revenue P&L, and a 400 person team.
Did the manager, whoever you reported to at 16, when you were like, excuse me, there's a couple of inefficiencies, was that guy like, what a punk kid trying to tell me how to do my job or whatever? Or did he just, or she just embrace it? Like, how did that conversation go?
Yes, his name was James Morales, and he really did embrace it. We're still friends to this day. He really did embrace it. And I added significant revenue and reduced costs to our operation and I freed up his time heavily. So for him, it was like truly like a win-win. It allowed him to not have to be in the back doing the schedule or ordering, and also be able to have more revenue because we were better staffed, as well as like less wastage. And so it was really just better for him. And he just kind of, at least give him some credit. Like he tested it out and it worked, and let me kind of just fully take over. You know, it's interesting, when I was 16, this guy used to come in every day. I remember, and he's got a double semi-dry, non-fat cappuccino and a Alabama Slammer cake. And one day he asked me what I want to be when I grew up, and I told him I wanted to be the CEO of Coffee Bean, because at the time that was about as big as I could dream. And turns out that he was the CEO of Coffee Bean.
No way.
And yeah, and so he.
But you didn't know that when he asked? You didn't know who he was?
I didn't know that.
Like undercover boss?
He was just like a daily customer. I was like, working the mornings and we became friends for a long time after that.
How did you find out that he was the CEO? Eventually somebody was like, yo, that's the CEO. And
yeah, that's basically
vying for his job.
Someone else knew and told me.
That's amazing. But in this process of solving problems, the average person, it seems to me, would just be like, oh, scheduling kind of doesn't work and blah blah, that doesn't work and whatever. But you somehow grabbed the bull by the horns and took control of the situation and actually provided a solution when nobody theretofore had, right? I mean, where does that kind of problem solving gene come from?
I really don't know. I love efficiency and optimization in kind of everything. So if I see like long lines at the door, not enough people working, I start thinking to myself, okay, like how could this be better? If I see like many people working and no customers, then that doesn't make sense to me either. And so starting to understand, like if you schedule based on number of transactions per hour, especially in the mornings when it's your peak business, if the line's past a certain point, people will stop coming in. So you literally don't capture business. It's not just slower business. And so I think from a macro basis, it's like life is about maximizing potential and in everything. Like you should different people have different potential, different businesses have different potential, but like you should always be in the potential maximizing. I think you're also very much the same way with Keyrenter in terms of like constantly improving efficiencies and automation. And it's like, how can you improve? And I see the world the same way.
And so transition or fast forward that a little bit. How did you end up exiting Coffee Bean, and how did you transition into your next business?
So, it was kind of a serendipitous. Did Coffee Bean through undergrad and into business school. During undergrad, I had a couple side businesses. One of which with my friends had a t-shirt company selling t-shirts to fraternities and sororities. I was doing some part-time sales for them as just like a hustle. When they finished, they actually rented an office from one of my Coffee Beans on Santa Monica Boulevard in Beverly Glen. That was their office, and started getting more and more involved with that. Helped them actually transition from fraternities and sororities to corporate, and actually referred Coffee Bean as a customer. In 2007, by the time we got to 2007, so they'd been working on my Coffee Bean for a couple of years. I kind of felt I felt the opportunity to be bigger with Bamco than necessarily Coffee Bean, and Coffee Bean was amazing. But I don't know. And I would say it run its course, but it was more exciting to do Bamco. I'd done Coffee Bean for 7 years and kind of made the jump over to Bamco. Bought it as the fifth partner, and me and my four friends from our fraternities, 5 of us kind of guys, bootstrapped that business to kind of for the next decade to 160 people, something like $37 million in revenue across 6 countries, and sold it. And now it's a division of a publicly traded company. I think it's like a $300 million plus division even. And 3 of the 5 guys are still there.
Wow. And so what was your role? I mean, you started off doing sales, you were hustling that element of it, but after a while you grew a team. I mean, how did it work? Were you always in sales, or were you helping with efficiencies and process also there?
Depending on who you ask, you'd say I was creating the need for other people to create efficiencies in process because we were moving very fast. But
I love that. It's a good point. Though oftentimes the sales function, if done really right, cannot, it exceeds the abilities of the operations team, which is a challenge in any business.
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, one is the way we set up the company. There's a kind of a head guy, Phil, who's a CEO, and then the other 4 of us each had our own divisions. My division ended up, by the time I left, was like 2/3 of the company's revenue and profit. I had a really good operations guy who I hired in 2009, who kind of rode the wave up with me, named Rodney Moret, who actually has his own company now called Source M.
Yeah,
Rodney, yeah, and he has his own company called Source M that's doing pretty well, and he helped. Under him, we had a pretty sizable team, both in China, India, US, and UK. And he helped us scale as we grew. And we were able to kind of, the sales was moving faster than the operations throughout the entire time, which is what took me to New York and London. But we were able to kind of not lose too much of a beat. And I think we consistently redid our org structure and our systems to keep up with our with our growth. And I give, Phil, the CEO, and Jake, the CFO, and Anson, the COO, and the whole team a bunch of credit for from a cash management perspective, from a systems perspective, from a hiring perspective, from a software perspective, of like really keeping up. And that really did allow us to grow bootstrapped for as long as we did.
We were talking yesterday with, or a couple of days ago, with Sean Prince, owner of Elect Technologies, and he was mentioning that, when he was early in the business, he had cash, he was buying stuff for technology, and he was selling it into businesses. Obviously, he's got 60 or 70 days of working capital out in the world. Did you ever face a situation where you needed something, you bought it from a factory in China, and you were 30 days terms with your buyer, and you like got into a precarious situation, or otherwise just like feeling the heat? Or did you always have anything where you needed like resilience?
I've got a great story about this. So it's 2010. We kind of fell into it's 2010. It's 2010. We kind of fell into. It's 2010, and we kind of fell into silly bands / zany bands and crazy bands and wacky bands and these like animal shaped silicone rubber bands.
What is that?
These like if you Google like silly bands with a Z, you'll see all these like animal shaped silicone rubber bands, and it went viral in 2010. And we met a bunch of the different companies at a toy fair and ended up producing tens of millions of them in a very short period of time.
Wow. Okay.
And what's interesting about that is like we needed a huge amount of cash very quickly. And so we essentially called like every mother, father, grandmother, rich aunts, person we met on the street that kind of liked us, and borrowed like, I don't know, might be close to, I don't think it was 8 figures, but it could have been close for a very short period of time to be able to fund the orders that quickly. And we kind of put it all on the line, and it thank God worked and delivered, and we were air shipping, so the cycles were fast, but the cash cycles were fast, but they were deep. And because it was very clear it was a bad, and so if it didn't deliver by the end of the school year, I wasn't sure it would be interesting in the fall, and then got the orders in April. So we needed all the cash at once, all deliver once, all get paid at once, and so we just like bet the house on it. Like,
I love it.
Trying to manage it, and it was kind of a life-changing event, actually.
But why didn't you go to a traditional bank? It would have taken too long. I mean, you just go get.
So we had a line of credit, but the amount of financing we're talking about in relation to the size of the business, I don't know, where in 2010 maybe we were a low 8-figure revenue business, barely, and we were talking about half of that in borrowing, and so and we were EBITDA under $1 million probably at the time, and we're borrow 5 over, so I don't know the numbers exactly, but
that is like that. Bet the house risk.
It was a big bet. The thing about silicone, of that particular silicone, it's kind of a commodity. So you're buying huge amounts of raw materials. You could sell it back at 99 cents the dollar to the store. So like the bigger thing is on this product is it's like a 25-day production cycle, and it's a very specific kind of silicone that's like CPSI compliant for California, so like for children, et cetera. But there's a long production cycle, and so you have to take a position, get through this production cycle. For some reason, if your orders don't come through, you could sell the raw materials back to the suppliers at almost par.
But the factory wasn't handling the raw material. You had to actually ship the raw material to the factory.
So there's like a handful of this particular silicone raw material factories in China, but there was like hundreds of like die cutting and mass production factories, but they were buying them from these much smaller, like petrochemical factory, basically, like are much larger but fewer petrochemical factories. And so there are 2 different factories, and the materials are a huge percentage of this. And at the scale that we were buying, it would save us the money to buy the materials and then ship them to. We were producing in like 15 factories, the actual die cutting. So it ended up working. I mean, did you have to ship back a bunch of raw material, or you basically ran through all? I think we ended up with like $500,000. I think I forget the numbers now. It's been 12 years, but I think like let's say we made something like 8 million packs, or maybe 12. Let's say 10 million plus or minus 2 million packs.
Wow.
And we got left with 500,000 packs till fall, and we sold those 500,000 packs. We got rid of all raw material. We had 500,000 packs in inventory at the end, which we sold to like someone distributor in Spain in the fall, still above cost. And so we ended up working out.
Wow. Okay. So fast forward, 2014, Bamco sold. Is that right?
2014, I took a sabbatical. I think that was like the beginning of the process. I forget when it closed. It might've been 2015 that it closed. It's
I don't know. There was a period that you and I were in Israel together.
Yeah,
and
I was on sabbatical from Bamco, deciding if I wanted to continue or not. But I'd moved to New York and I moved to London, set up offices there. If my partners were kind of saying, "Come back to LA," we're all in LA and things are, we're on LA, like let's get back on the same page. They'd all started families. The business was kind of turning into more of a cash cow than a high growth story at the time. And to me, that was not exciting. And so I took a sabbatical. And I think just culturally, we diverged a bit in terms of worldviews. And by the end of the summer, I was like, okay, I don't think I'm coming back full time. And I think I'd be very open if there's an acquirer to acquire. I said, well, we're still very happy here. We ended up finding a strategic that did acquire us, which was super nice and paid,
So you cashed out.
So we cashed out.
What's the most important thing that you think you learned in the business, either from doing the work or from a mentor? What can you share with somebody else that can help them in their entrepreneurial journey?
I'll say things that I try. Look, I think I learned a great deal from my business partners in different capacities at different times. I learned a great deal about moving fast. I learned a great deal about like closing deals and building things and recruiting people. I'll say some of the things though that I would do differently and have tried to do differently since. If you look at our leadership of that company, it was like 5 white men. Our company was almost all male, almost all white in all leadership positions, except for the actual Chinese people in China and the Indian people in India. And I think also the wealth of the company, the ownership of the company was also all white men, best friends. When we sold the company, no one else got rich from it. Not that we got so rich, but it wasn't distributed in any way. There wasn't a party. It was, I think we gave them some champagne at 9:30 in the morning. And it was it was a weird moment. And then they ended up laying off 20% of the workforce.
Oh man.
Later. It was really not, and it was really not a way that I would want a company to grow that we've invested in or that I lead again. I'd want a more distributed leadership, more diverse leadership, more distributed wealth.
But let's pause on that for a second. If there are 5 people that found a business or 4 people that found a business, how do you create that distribution for greater equity of the people in the organization? And then how do you promote diversity of people of color, of women, of people of all ilks in general, so that it can be generally more equitable and you have more wealth creation across a broader swath of people?
Yeah, so I think that if you look at their team now, which I think has 400 people on LinkedIn, I looked the other day. I think it looks like they've adjusted, but I think it's being intentional about who you hire. B, it's about stock options and long-term incentives for your key people. And there were people that had been there at the time more than a decade that didn't have any ownership in the company that were very key to the company's success. And so if you're really intentional about who you hire and then intentional about the professional development of the people there, you don't have to fall into having, probably the 7 lead executives when I left were all white men. I'm trying to think if there was any female leadership anywhere, and I can't.
And now that and we can fast forward to Atento in a second, but now that your senior leadership team is far more diverse, what do you think that diversity could have added to
difference of opinions? I think we made a lot of, we did. I don't want to say we were an echo chamber, but there's definitely homogeny. We were all white Jews from LA, all of us. Maybe one was from San Diego, and one was from Bakersfield. So we had a 300-mile different gap, and all
Bakersfield by far the most diverse in opinion there. Okay, so you close down that chapter with Bamco. You take a sabbatical and you end up starting Spot Ad. Tell us about that transition. Why that?
So I didn't start Spot Ad, didn't start Bamco. I was the 5th person for both and partner for both. So Bamco was a great run, super great.
Yeah. So I should say that you're historically your predominant skill set has been running fast and scaling things. That's a good point.
Yeah. Even the Tulsa component as well. And so that's correct. And so not the idea guy. I'm someone that I think has decent nose to recognize a good idea and figures out how to grow it very quickly. And so Bamco provided me the ability to become an accredited investor and start investing in real estate in 2005, and start investing in venture and angel investing in 2012, 2013. One of my first 10 investments, let's say, was in an Israeli ad tech company called Spot Ad. I knew now what I knew then, I wouldn't be investing in ad tech. But the company was at the time trying to be at the forefront of algorithmic rich media, so like interactive media buying and buying and installations and selling and acquisitions and using like highly engaging gamified ads. The rich media market wasn't that mature. In 2014, when I was with you in Israel, I had nothing to do because war broke out and you left. And so I started kind of consulting for them and helping them. By the end of the summer, they talked me into coming in as president.
You say I left. You say I left in the same sentence as like war broke out, as if I fled. I just went back to a job.
Yeah, you just went back to a job.
I just had a job,
and then you left. But
which doesn't.
But the combination of those two things made it so I didn't have very much to do all day.
Also, like it's like war broke out, and I had to go back to my CIA post somewhere and like do reconnaissance and ops.
I remember like having like a very inconspicuous meal with your Lebanese contact in this like undisclosed restaurant, and it wasn't clear how you two knew each other, and he was like twice your age and very influential in Lebanon. And then all of a sudden we never saw from him again. And he went back to Dubai. Those are the series of events I remember.
I spoke to Elliot Tabili recently, actually. He's such a great guy. I spoke to him recently.
How's it going? Was it like over normal channels or?
It was over a telephone. He's in New York and he wants to invest in Tulsa real estate. So I was chatting with him. I want to get him involved for sure. Such a great guy. Anyways, so war breaks out. I flee. You get involved with Spot Ad.
Yeah, so I was an investor. You know, it was kind of a technical founder. 3 of the 4 guys were pretty technical. One guy was kind of BD, Yoav, but they didn't have any U.S. relationships. All the customers in the U.S. So I get involved. Actually, Uber had been recruiting me at the time as well. Uber ends up being their big customer. Work with the business. The business kind of goes live in 2014, end of 2014, but it's like very low scale. Got to have this, the kind of the big moment for the business was this internal conflict of like, do we stick with rich media? And I'm basically saying, look, I have an order from Uber and Expedia and StubHub and Amazon, and like all of which they're getting huge scale on static, which is like non-interactive ads. You know, why don't we just move to static until rich media catches up? Intellectually, the technical founders thought this was like not exciting, but I was like, it's just a much bigger market. Even if we have like 0.1%, it's so big, and we have like 100% of this other market. It's not big. And so we end up doing it. We end up going to like from 0 to $16 million in revenue in under 2 years, 85% margin. It was like, yeah, let's go. Set up, you know, my non-solicit from Bamco expired. So like hired old Bamconians in London and the US, set up New York, London, China, California, very similar geographies to Bamco in under 12 months, and like just like turned it all the way up. It was a crazy roller coaster. You know, I'll never forget, we were Google AdX's product of the year in 2015 and 2016, like Google's like internal DSP, which is like what we were, ended up like copying our code. And then they like turned us off in a way, doing from like 70 grand in revenue day to 0 over Memorial Day weekend, 1 year from the day we turned on. Wow. But then we like got on Baidu, and we were up to like $1 million a month on Baidu. It was just like this crazy, it was out of a movie. Really amazing experience. But I left, part of the reason why I left BAM, because I kind of, you know, I had this 30th birthday that you were at in Cannes Saint-Tropez, and I was dating this girl at the time that it was not the right girl for me. And I remember waking up the morning after my 30th birthday thinking like, oh my God, like what am I doing with my life? Like the world is no better for me. I haven't been in it. And I want to like change my life, and I don't want to wake up at 40 feeling like I've not contributed to society. My parents are both do-gooders versus do-wellers, and I wanted to be both, not just a do-weller. And so working in ad tech was uninspiring, and I was kind of involved in the Hillary Clinton campaign as a volunteer since she announced, basically. And by the summer of 2016, watching the Republican National Convention, and note that I was a Republican in my younger years, so not that I wasn't a devout anti-Republican, but watching the convention to me as a grandson of a Holocaust survivor, and on one side and on both sides, one side Auschwitz, one side German. I kind of felt like the rhetoric of blaming immigrants and blaming in demonizing press and all these things was fascism, and I had this kind of out of body experience. You know, watching each night at the convention, Giuliani to Christie to Ingram to finally Trump. I called an emergency board meeting with Spot Ad and said, "Hey, I think we should move the entire company to Wisconsin. We're so far ahead of our revenue goals. We're ahead of our next year revenue goals at this point." You know, and have the entire company, you know, work a couple hours a day to keep things moving, and it can work for Clinton the rest of the time. Remember, these are all my friends and my brother, and like I controlled all these.
How was that received? How was that received? I want to take all the company resources and I want to devote it to the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially Israel, you know, Trump was pretty good for Israel. So it was received. First of all, they actually didn't believe that Trump could win. And so they kind of laughed at me on one hand. And on the other hand, there's like, you're clearly like not, your mind is not thinking as a fiduciary of this company, like you should take a leave of absence and know you can't take everyone with you. And so I did. And I never came back. And I'm really happy about that. And that was like the beginning of my journey to Tulsa in a way.
Is that how you met Jody Feiner, my wife, by the way?
I met Jody in 2014 when I lived in Los Angeles. After leaving Israel, I moved in with Kareem Daniel, our mutual friend in Malibu. Yeah. And I met Jody I was there for 3 or 4 months, and I met Jody during that window of time.
Okay. So part of the reason I'm married to Jody Feiner today is because you met her in 2014 and connected us later.
And the reason I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma is visiting you two. So I guess for better or for worse, this is how it happened.
We're here together. Okay. So fast forward from there, Hillary Clinton doesn't win. That what happened after that?
That's actually the next Jody. I was with Jody that night, and we went to this conference. And you meet Jody Feiner the next night. It was actually the most immediate thing that happened after that. And then so we're all at Summit at Sea. By then, the Summit at Sea, I decided to run for mayor of New York on social and economic justice and generational change.
Wow! And what led to that? What catalyzed that change? That change of thought? I mean, you came into that to that event and you were kind of depressed. You're out of sorts. And what led to that change?
I mean, I didn't know what to do. I think cities, states, and governments, non-federal governments would never be more important because our federal government was going to be, our federal government would be so scary under the Trump administration that I felt like, I'm friends of the founders of Tinder, friends of the founders of Uber, friends of the founders of all these people that changed the world, but no one's working in government. And so like, well, why can't we as a generation, hack government and take over government? And so,
that's the Singapore model, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you look at like there are countries out there where the best and brightest do work in government, and not to say that the people in our government aren't the best and brightest, but our political system is gridlocked and not functioning, unfortunately. And so we did that for 4 months and 4 days. Really happy I did it. Really happy I dropped out. One of the toughest things I ever did was dropping out and kind of recovering from that.
What were the lessons that you learned from running for mayor of New York City? What were the challenges that you overcame, and what would you do again?
Yeah, so I think it was a big learning about myself. I think I feel really good, and kind of what I do for a living now in a way is similar to this. Is I feel really good about sitting in rooms of people like us that have the ability to help people, and Atento Capital literally means help. Like I feel very comfortable talking about how we should help people and like what we can be doing to help people, be it volunteering or donating or mentoring or investing or whatever. In helping, being in the business of helping more people help more people is literally what I do for a living now. But it's something I'm super comfortable with. What I'm not comfortable with, and what like ultimately like crushed me in like the burden of it, put me in a really bad place from a mental health perspective, is like looking people in the eyes, and that the people I want to help and saying, hey, if you vote for me, I will change your life, or your life will be changed. And like never in a million years did I really come to think that some person might think that Michael Basch would represent hope. To me, that's Barack Obama, or that like they would kind of irrationally, some person who's stuck in public housing and their kids are at high school with a 3% pass rate for state exams, and they don't have access to childcare, don't have access to healthcare, and their father, their children is in prison for 3 strikes laws that for nonviolent drug crimes for 20 years, and like deep, complex, systemic issues. Like never did I think that someone would actually like look to me to kind of irrationally, get them unstuck. And it might have only been 50 people that were sending me text messages of my stickers on their kids' lockers and all this other stuff. But there was a non-zero chance, that let's say de Blasio gets indicted and all of a sudden somehow I'm the next mayor of New York with 400,000 people and a $90 billion budget on a $1.3 trillion economy, $1.3 trillion economy. There's a non-zero chance that somehow I become mayor. And if I become mayor, there's a non-zero chance that their lives could actually be worse, not better. Because it really is, de Blasio was a known C+. But I think at some point I wondered, like, could I definitively say I'd be better than that? And I felt like I think so, but I don't know so. And I worry that the people I want to help could actually be worse. If for some reason all the teachers strike and everyone strikes the first day trying to gain leverage from me. And it really was, it was too heavy a burden. And so I withdrew.
So fast forward to the time now that you're at Atento. Let's skip for a moment how you got to Tulsa and the journey through Tulsa to Atento Capital. But you do in the end found Atento Capital. And how are you now helping people's lives? How are you helping people be better, help other people be better? And what lessons did you take from everything you did prior to founding Atento that you've implemented in the business now?
Yeah. So,
and why don't we just start with what Atento is? Tell us a little bit about Atento, and then I want to hear about all the lessons that you learned, how you implemented them.
Yeah. So actually, we the way we're describing ourselves these days when we're actually rebranding our website is we're Atento is in the business of unlocking unsung potential through financial and human capital and bridging networks. And, we invest in, first of all, we invest in early stage companies, but really humans, both that work here as well as in our portfolio. And we essentially in the business of trying to help them achieve their potential. And we do so, Atento means helpful in Spanish. And we do so by trying to not just provide, financial capital, but human capital, that can look like we're helping them recruit, helping them with customers, helping them with strategy, helping them raise additional capital. And we're very hands-on. And so, if you look at, I'm born in San Francisco, raised in Los Angeles, and lived in New York, London, and Tel Aviv. Those are all huge cities with huge access to capital markets, huge amounts of entrepreneurs, huge amounts of venture. When you think about, the middle of the country, there's a deficit of venture capital. A lot of the young, smart people went off to college, never came home, and moved to the coast to work at Google or Facebook or wherever. And so there was a kind of a void of, value add capital and network in this part of the country. And so Atento in Tulsa, Oklahoma, looks to fill that void and looks to kind of be the bridge between founders here on the coast. And we invest in both founders that are from here as well as founders that are willing to move here. And we're generally willing to invest at an earlier stage than other funds might. It could be a high potential human with a really good idea that other VCs might say, okay, we'll make some traction first. And we'll say, no, we'll make a bet on you and work with you to make that traction, because they might not have, the people we invest in, like, what if someone can't afford not to work? And what if someone doesn't have access to rich friends to invest in them? Then why should they not be having the right to build a company? And we try and democratize access to venture capital by investing earlier than others would and working with them more than others would to try and help people achieve their human potential.
So when I walk into your office, I see a lot of that, like in person. I walk in, there are people, there are some kind of co-working elements to your office. There's a big kitchen area where people can cross-pollinate ideas and a bunch of other stuff. But principally what you see when you walk into the office is there's like a little bit of co-working space, and people are actively working on their ideas, and they can walk over a couple of desks over and solicit help from other people to do all the stuff that you just said. What role does that play? Like being just access, not just to the capital, to the, to what you're offering, and you can actually actively make connections, but you could do that theoretically, to somebody in LA. What role does it play to have a co-working space where people are like actively engaging with other people, other, I guess, portfolio companies that you have founders, in the same space?
I mean, I think there's like a strong component of people getting ideas and learnings from one another that is place-based and density-based and intersection-based, and just having kind of other people that are also trying to think through main ideas, that are going through some of the same challenges, that are going through difficult fundraising and all of the things, that having a network component helps raise all ships. I think in a way, I could functionally do what I do in any city. I could go to LA or New York and do kind of the same thing. But the big part about what we're trying to do is the unsung component, meaning like we really want to be the difference between the person that could be amazing but isn't today, that needs a couple of little things here or there to help them achieve that potential, versus the person that's going to be amazing no matter what, and like we're just capital. And I think we think our place is a further, our physical space further helps that by having that kind of collaborative environment. But that's why we're place-based in Tulsa.
And so tell me a little bit about the diversity component of your senior leadership team and the lessons that you learned, how you carried those lessons forward from previous organizations. You said that BAMCO was 5 of you and you're all white and male. What have you done, and what does your senior leadership team look like, and how has that really impacted the growth of Atento?
Yeah, so we're majority minority, and I think about 50%.
I love that. Majority minority. I love that.
Yeah, and about 50% female, I think. It depends on a given day. And we put a lot of thought and intention to it. If you look at our Atento management team, which is managers at Atento, which is kind of our leadership team.
Say it again. Atento managers.
We have Atento management, 10 managers, 10 tins, and 10 turns. And our Atento management team is, you got 2 white men, you got 2 white women, of African-American woman and African-American man. So it's like 3 men, 3 women, 1/3 Black. It's pretty diverse. I mean, maybe we could be more diverse, but it's something we really think a lot about, and we don't see it as like man, we have to do this. We see this as like, this is a competitive advantage for us because we really do have a diversity of opinions and perspectives and backgrounds. And I think it gives people in different rooms, it makes decision-making, it can make decision-making slower because you have more different perspectives coming into decisions, but it also can make things more comprehensive and holistic because you really have a bunch of different worldviews. And so we also kind of think through how many people are local from Tulsa versus we recruit here. And I think it's something like half and half. It's between 35 to 50% from Tulsa and 50 to 65% we've recruited to Tulsa. And I think that also creates a good diversity of opinions from a geographic perspective. And so it's something we think about often.
And so what else about the Attenterns, as you call them? I mean, where are they coming from? How are you recruiting them? What are they adding to your business? And what are you adding to their lives as they go back into whatever they were doing before?
Yeah, so the Attenterns, we think this in a few ways. I mean, first of all, our Attentern program this summer has 29 people, probably a third of them from Oklahoma, 2/3 of them from out of state, 3 MBAs, the rest are undergrad, just graduated undergrad. And we put them in the TU dorms and we program it with a day of professional development and a bunch of each week and a bunch of social events as well. Like we kind of think of it as sleepover camp meets first job with the KPI goal of being best summer of their lives. And the way we do it is we recruit all these folks to town. You know, we have a couple Princetonians, a couple people from MIT, Cornell. We also have Oklahoma, ORU. I mean, it really runs the gamut, Michigan, et cetera. And we recruit them. We give them a venture capital 101 experience. They leave like understanding venture, but they work in the portfolio. And so we're meant to be a beachhead to get these really talented people who may never come to Oklahoma, come here for a really well-programmed summer, work in the portfolio, and then hopefully, if they're from here, to think about coming back when they graduate. And if they're not from here, all of a sudden Tulsa's on their radar and they have some direct relationships with potential employers and that experience is there for them.
But so the Attenterns actually create capacity for the portfolio companies. So a CEO, a founder of a portfolio company can say, I'm working on this really hard problem. I need somebody to help me with this component of it so we can get to a solution. And the Attenterns are actually working. And is that like a 2-month or 3-month thing? They're working to solve that problem?
Yeah, it's 10 weeks. And it's exactly right. And we cover 2/3 of the cost. The portfolio company covers about 1/3. And they're meant to be leveraged, and they're doing either market research. Some of them are software engineers, or some of them are doing financial modeling, or like project management. There's a variety of functions, but correct, they are meant to be like a value-added employee to the portfolio company.
I love it. How awesome! What a great experience for both the Attenterns and also the founders. Let's turn for a second. What are you reading that's not related to your business? How do you relax? What podcasts are you listening to, et cetera?
Well, I listened to Pod Save America, which I didn't realize that you and Craig were such big fans of. Good political propaganda. But no, I listen to daily, every day. Pod Save the World is one I listen to as well. Pod Save America sometimes, Wall Street Journal sometimes. In terms of reading, I don't get to read as much as I want to. I probably read the news the most and the kinds of macroeconomic trends. And
you do that for personal reasons or because it helps you make smarter investment decisions on the Attention side?
I really enjoy understanding what's going on in the world, politically, in terms of foreign affairs and economically. And I also think it's important from an investment perspective to understand what's happening in the world to make better investment decisions and secular trends. So I stay busy in that regard. In terms of books, the most recent book I've read, or I'm in the process of reading, is actually I recently purchased Caleb Gale's book, former Tulsa, We Refuse to Forget, and I've kind of started opening up that, and I'm excited for that. And so I strongly recommend it for those of you from Tulsa listening to it. By Caleb Gale, Gayle. Really interesting guy. But yeah, I think my biggest challenge is lack of time, and I'd like to have more intentionality around getting to read more. But time is a limited resource currently.
Yeah, I understand. That's certainly a problem that we all face with 24 hours in a day. Any final advice or thoughts, experiences that you can share on helping young entrepreneurs get a business off the ground, or experience that you can share for founders that are looking to find capital that are maybe in tier 3, tier 2 markets?
Yeah, I mean, I think my big message is not all businesses should raise venture capital. Venture is a very specific kind of capital for high growth businesses. There's a lot of other forms of capital or other businesses that should be bootstrapped like yours, that can be huge cash cows that might not require outside capital, even though I've tried to put capital in your business unsuccessfully.
You are the chairman of the board, so that is helpful.
It's true, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I think capital is raising capital is not success, is a mechanism to hopefully achieve. And I think too many people that see that capital raise or raising capital as the achievement itself, but it really is just a means, not the ends. And so, but for those businesses that require capital to get to a certain point in which they'll be high growth, capital could make a lot of sense. And then that's the situation where, you give us a call.
I love it. Mike, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. We've been here talking to Mike Basch, who is the founder of Atento Capital, a font of knowledge. And also, thank you for being my social chair in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Jody and I really appreciate it. Mike, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate you.
Thank
See
you
you
for
later.
having me.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Same Day Podcast. Tune in to a new show each week and be sure to subscribe to get future episodes.